The Canadian press.
At no time did Russian planes enter Canadian airspace, but within 24 hours of the President's visit here to Canada last week, we did scramble two F-18 fighter planes from NORAD and Canada Command. They met a Russian aircraft that was approaching Canadian airspace, and as they have done on previous occasions, they sent very clear signals that are understood. That aircraft was to turn around, turn tail, and head back to its own airspace, which it did. It wouldn't be unusual because we have seen previous activities in the north, but they have increased. It's difficult to say whether this was a coincidence or it was an effort on the part of the Russians to simply perhaps be up to some mischief or cause a bit of a diversion. Clearly, it's a coincidence that it happened at a time when, our security focus would be Ottawa. I'm not going to stand here and accuse the Russians of having deliberately done this during the presidential visit, but it was a strong coincidence which we met with a presence, as we always do, of F-18 fighter planes and very world-class pilots that know their business and send a strong signal that they should back off and stay out of our airspace.
The Canadian press.
Missile-like vapor trail was recorded off California's coast, and the federal government still can't provide a concrete answer as to what it is. Now, the Pentagon says that they are satisfied it was, quote, likely caused by an aircraft. And while we wait for the truth, a number of other theories are making the rounds. And here to submit just a few are retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General Tom McInerney is with us, national security and war correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Sarah Carter, and investigative journalist Richard Miniter. All right, conventional wisdom, General McInerney is, all right, this is an airplane. I'm willing to listen to that, but don't we need to know what aircraft it was, where it was flying, where it took off, what time? Why can't we get a definitive answer? Do you agree with that assertion?
Well, first of all, I do not agree with the assertion, Sean. And your question is, we should get a definitive answer. You're absolutely correct. Look, this is not an airplane because of the plume and the way you see that plume. Airplanes do not con at sea level or 5,000 feet like that. I spent 35 years flying fighters, and I never saw an airplane con like that. That is a missile. It's launched from a submarine, and you can see it go through a correction course, and then it gets a very smooth trajectory, meaning that the guidance system is now kicked in. It's going at about 45 degrees away from you. That's why you're not seeing a lot of vertical velocity.
General, are you 100% certain?
Sean, I've watched that film 10 times. I've watched 15 other Trident films, SM-3s, Standard Missile 3s, and TLAM launches. I am absolutely certain that that is not an aircraft.
Sarah, we're told this is an optical illusion, that you really got to see it in its context, that everyone seemed to buy into the conventional wisdom. Now I listen to General McInerney, who has a tremendous amount of background and experience. He says something very different. Your reaction?
Well, I haven't just heard it from the general. I've been hearing this from other sources as well, and I'm also hearing the other side. I'm not an expert here on aircraft and trajectories. I think the general is much more an expert than I. He's an aviator, and he understands aircraft and he understands missile systems. I contacted NORAD today. I spoke with officials at NORAD. And the one thing they did tell me is that it was not a missile, but they did not give any other explanation as to what this could be. And so it leaves me to wonder if our Defense Department and our folks at NORAD have no idea for the last day and a half what this is. So speculation is out.
There's something. Look, I'm willing to accept that there are optical illusions. I'm willing to accept that this might be something else. This might have been an aircraft. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. When I hear General McInerney here with his background, his expertise, him being a pilot, and his definitive answer that this is a missile, I'm kind of nervous that maybe my government's covering something up here.
But I can't imagine that this is a foreign submarine launching a missile off the coast of the United States.
Does that look like? Well, General, if in fact this is a missile, then we've got ourselves a major national security threat here.
So long as they are operating in international waters, as frankly we do around the world, and are behaving in a responsible way, they are certainly free to do so, and it doesn't cause any alarm within this building. While it is interesting and noteworthy that they are in this part of the world, it doesn't pose any threat, and it doesn't cause any concern.
That was the Pentagon's press secretary saying that the Russian subs off the U.S. coast are not a threat. Now, if the subs were not here to do harm, then what in the world were they doing here in the first place?
Dr. Stephen Flanagan has the answers. He's the Senior Vice President of the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Doctor. So what were, in fact, these Russian submarines doing, and how close were they to our borders?
Well, as this Pentagon spokesman mentioned, they were off in the international waters, so probably out beyond the 200-mile limit. I think this was mostly political posturing. It's rather a dismaying sign that the Russians haven't quite reset their own mindset, and the feeling that as President Obama tried to open the door to a new relationship, and even in his speech in Moscow, asked for Russia to kind of abandon this kind of behavior, the Russians are showing that they haven't quite yet given up on this idea that, well, if you want to mess around in our backyard in Georgia and the Caucasus, well, we can continue to mess around in your backyard.
Well, this is concerning to me, and some of the stuff that I was studying about this was fascinating, and some of these maneuvers that they do, I want to get into some of the details of this because this really hasn't been talked about, which is that these nuclear subs sitting there, and on these maneuvers, what are they doing? They're basically waiting for orders as part of their maneuvers to launch nuclear warheads. Now, obviously, they're not doing that, but this is part of their maneuvers, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I mean, we all, both the United States and the Russians, still have many ballistic missile and cruise missile. This is a cruise missile carrying submarine, an air-breathing nuclear missile. We're not sure that those submarines are armed with nuclear weapons. I don't know, but the fact is that these are systems that were designed to track U.S. submarines and surface warfare vessels, and to look for opportunities if there were conflict to obviously attack enemy hostile ships. But I don't think this is necessarily a hostile gesture. As the Russian defense spokesman said the other day, they're out on patrols. This is something that both sides do, and as long as we're not interfering with operations or doing anything menacing, this is part of the old cat and mouse game, unfortunately, that we used to play.
Here's what I have a problem with. There's a student of history, and you see what happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? The Russians had, of course, missiles pointed at the United States in Cuba. Now, if the Russians working with Cuba have these subs in Cuban waters, how is this any different? I mean, we cited the Monroe Doctrine as a reason to keep European powers out of Western waters. How is this any different? As you say, these relationships seem to be a little strained.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. I mean, the Monroe Doctrine applies to establishing spheres of influence and an enduring presence. But the fact is, as the Pentagon spokesman said, the Russians are operating in international waters. We operate in international waters off the coast of many different countries, including Russia, with our submarines and other vessels. We're watching what goes on as a way to enhance our own security. I mean, the Russians, I don't think this is a threatening gesture. I think this is a political gesture. This is essentially saying, we're back. We're able to project power at some distance, and don't forget that we're still a formidable power.
This is an unprecedented Russian deployment in Latin America. 2 Cold War era long-range strategic bombers now on the ground in Venezuela for military exercises uncomfortably close to the United States. It's a propaganda gift for Venezuela's firebrand president Hugo Chavez. A strong critic of Washington, he he hasn't missed the opportunity to taunt his archenemy, even suggesting he'll fly in one of the aircraft himself. Russian defense officials say the bombers, which are capable of carrying a nuclear payload, will be in Venezuela for several days.
Towards me. When I saw the light, I thought it was a car. Because in Romania and in Italy, they always try to run me over with cars. So I thought they found me here too. But it was not a car. The light surrounded me, and out of the light I heard the same voice. It was the same angel. Dimitri, why are you so despaired? Why'd you punish me so harshly? What did I do? Why couldn't you let me stay in prison? But my family would have had a home. I don't have a bed to let my head down on. Why was I brought here? Dimitri, I brought you to this country because this country will burn. So why'd you bring me here to burn? Why didn't you let me die in jail in my own country? He said, Dimitri, be quiet. Get beside me. I don't know what the device was, but he pulled me beside him and he showed me all of California. Do you see what I've shown you? This is as Sodom and Gomorrah. Their sins have reached God, and God has decided to punish them by fire. He came and showed me Las Vegas. This is as Sodom and Gomorrah, and one day it will burn. He came and showed me New York. This is New York. This is as Sodom and Gomorrah, and one day it will burn. And then he showed me Florida. This is Florida. This is as Sodom and Gomorrah, and in one day it will burn. But what will you do with me, I said. I told you to be quiet. And he brought me back to the place we left. He said, now we can talk. I brought you to this country because I love this country. I love the people in this country. And through your mouth, I want to wake up a lot of people. How can you wake them through my mouth when I can't understand anyone? You don't worry about that. I'll prepare some more for you to speak through. You reach television, radio, churches, but tell them everything I tell you. Again, he said, America will burn. But how can America burn when it's so powerful, I said. He said, tell them as I tell you. Hide nothing. If you will try to hide anything, I will punish you harshly. The Russian spies have figured out where the most powerful nuclear plants in America are. When the Americans will think it's peace and quiet, and they rule the world, then from the ocean, out of Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, they will bombard the nuclear plants in America, and America will burn.